Hey, this is Adam Blackstar, and I'm here to talk to you today about some more atheist stuff, as we like to do on this channel. More specifically, I wanted to talk about the freedom of atheism. Like, do you really feel free as an atheist, or do you feel like you're in the bondage of sin, as Christians like to suggest in their hymns and readings of the Bible? Before I do that, though, I wanted to ask you if you could try to ignore the fact that I probably sound more nasally even than usual because my allergies just suck today, and so does my hair, which explains the Mary Tyler Moore-like headband. May she rest in peace. So with that out of the way, the reasons why I wanted to make this video. For one thing, I've been getting some messages in social media from people who have told me that they've been watching my videos and that they're in their deconversion process, and I've actually been helping them through that process. So to me, that's really a gratifying thing, since I was in that same place like over a year ago, and at that time I was looking for the same thing. I was looking for a friendly face on YouTube, uh, someone who looked fairly normal to me, who would tell me what it was like to be an atheist. So I think that's really gratifying to me. Um, some people who are deconverting are going through a little bit of a difficult process of fear and guilt, I suppose. Worrying that they're making the wrong decision, worrying that they're going to regret their decision, uh, even though I think they realize deep down that it's not really their decision, that they are just being honest with themselves, and that they are just not willing to go on attempting to deceive themselves into holding a position that they really themselves don't believe in. So this video is partially for them. And it's also just because you hear a lot of Christians talk about how their Christianity makes them free and their salvation, being born again, what have you. I mean, you even hear like in a lot of the hymns, like you have Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound, saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. So that hymn right there is basically saying uh, that without God and without this faith, that you are a wretch, that you are lost, and that you are blind. So these aren't very desirable attributes to have, but are they true? There's another hymn, He set me free, He broke the bonds of prison for me. So again, if you're not with Jesus, if you ain't got Jesus, then you are in bonds and you're in prison. So you're in bondage in prison, which again, these are not circumstances that most of us really find desirable. But are they true? It's interesting to me that the Christians who make these assertions and sing these songs and really believe these things, most of them have really no experience with this. I mean, it's not as if they were once in a position where they were rational thinkers, but then they converted from that to Christianity. Uh, I can't think of one example from the people that I've known of someone who was not just raised with these beliefs. Even people who weren't raised in church, they were still raised with these beliefs to an extent because these are the beliefs that are propagated by the culture that we live in. Even the non-religious still believe there's a God, and many times they still believe that there's a Jesus and that he saved them, but that he just doesn't require them to fulfill all the ABCs of Christian religious tradition. I suppose I could make an allowance for people who hold these beliefs, but maybe they rebelled against them at some point. In fact, I can identify with that because I felt that way. Uh, like when you're a Christian and you know that God has these expectations, but you're not meeting those expectations, and that is a stressful. I mean, that is like being in prison. It is like being in bonds because you don't have peace of mind when you're going through that. You are always experiencing everything, even good times. You're always experiencing it with this little voice in the back of your mind telling you that you shouldn't be having that much fun because there are repercussions coming if you don't straighten up and get in line. So I suppose from that perspective, I could understand someone saying that they were lost, but now they're found. They were blind, but now they see. They were in bonds, but now they're free, etc. But this grim picture that is painted by Christians when they are referring to their period of rebelling against the beliefs that they hold, living in contradiction to their own beliefs, that does not carry over to walking away from those beliefs. It's completely different because one, people in the first category who are just living contrary to their own beliefs, uh, the reason that they feel awful most of the time is because their conscience has been conditioned to make them feel that way. Now, for those of us who realize that this is true, that the conscience is not this voice, it's not this supernatural voice in your head, that it's just this product of human conditioning. When we realize that, then we understand that the conscience cannot always be our guide. That the conscience must be tempered by rational thinking. We have to be skeptical even of our conscience. Otherwise, we could be strapping bombs on ourselves and running planes into buildings. So skepticism is always the right path to take toward any belief. And in saying that, this particular video, I don't want it to sound like that this is like a sales pitch for atheism. This is not me telling people who are believers that, hey, come on over, join us atheists because it really is greener. The grass really is greener over here. That is not a reason to become an atheist. It's not a good reason. The reason to become an atheist is the right reason. The good reason to become an atheist is no different than the good reason to become a Christian or subscribe to any other religion. It must be based on legitimate truth-seeking, or rather it should be based on that. It should be based on following the evidence and accepting the conclusion, no matter how inconvenient. It should not in any way be based on incredulity, and it should not be based on our emotions. The freedom that atheism affords, I would say, is more of a perk of atheism. It's a perk of shedding those old belief systems that inform our consciences to lie to us. So, some examples from my own life. When I first deconverted, and it was not a choice, it was just a result of a continuous gradual process that had been ongoing, which led me to that inevitable conclusion. So there was never, with me, there was never any like, well, I'm in the process of deconverting. It was not in my head at the time that that's what was happening until it was over. So I think maybe I didn't go through some of the guilt and the fear that others are going through. Um, Whenever that happened, whenever I realized that I didn't hold those beliefs anymore, uh, there was no like radical change in me. It was not like what am I going to do first? I did not suddenly have this overwhelming desire to go out and commit things that I used to consider sin. So it's not that kind of freedom. I actually didn't really change in any way that I could really detect right away. Again, I have evolved since then in some ways. But when I was a Christian, I was what I considered myself to be a truth seeker. I considered myself to be a moral person who, a person of strong moral character. That didn't change when I lost those beliefs. I was still that same person. Now, my conclusions about what is moral changed, but I was no less passionate about being moral, maybe even more passionate about being moral because I realized that morality is something that human beings do because it is a personal conviction. It's something that we feel is right and good. These are our feelings. It's not something any longer that I was doing because I feared, I was afraid of the consequences of not doing those things. So there was no huge, drastic, radical change where, I went out and got tattoos and piercings. And, you know, I'm not, by the way, I'm not trying to equate tattoos and piercings with like being evil or whatever, but I'm just saying that I didn't go out and like change myself. I was the same person, I felt. Over time, those things changed, but the freedom that came along with it was something that just sort of I gradually became more aware of. Like when I was a Christian, for example, it was really hard to ever enjoy myself without there being some kind of like a nagging feeling that I should be doing something else. Or just a nagging question of should I be doing something different. Like anytime I would meet someone and I would get along with this person, there was always this nagging feeling that I should be witnessing to this person, that I should be inviting this person to my church or giving them, some kind of like a sermon or something like that. And really, I just wanted to be this person's friend. I just wanted to get along with them. I never liked the process of witnessing. I never liked the process of trying to sell my beliefs on other people. But at the same time, I felt like to a degree that that was an obligation that I had as a Christian. So there was always that nagging in me, especially if my friend was someone who used what I would consider them to be coarse language, like a lot of profanity, or if they like just used if they wanted me to watch a certain movie or like Game of Thrones or something like this, uh, I would feel this inner voice telling me that I needed to object to that. Not necessarily to put them down for doing it, but to explain why I don't do those sorts of things. Now, in doing so, that would kind of be like a passive aggressive way of putting someone down. But this was what I felt was standing up for my values. So I don't have to do that anymore. I can accept people the way they are. I can get along with people for who they are. I don't feel like I need to always be putting walls between me and other people and saying, oh no, I don't talk that way. I don't do that. I don't watch that. So that is really nice, not having to do that. And back to enjoying myself, I feel like I can just enjoy myself now. I work, I fulfill my responsibilities, and I can come home and I can just enjoy myself. I don't have to come home and get on my face before God or spend time in the scripture. Um, I can come home and play video games, or I can watch Netflix. I can just relax and enjoy myself. I don't have to, when I go to bed at night, I'm not thinking, oh, I forgot to read my scripture for today. So I'm tired, my eyes are like foggy, and I'm sitting here trying to read my scripture and put on this reverent mindset and trying to get something from this, when really I know that I'm not getting anything from it and I just want to go to bed. This nagging that I need to pray, I don't have that anymore. And toward the end of my Christianity, it was like, well, how does prayer even work? Yeah, prayer didn't even make sense to me, but I knew I was supposed to, so I tried to. I mean, I really tried. And that feeling that I need to make time for this is not there anymore. I was a tither, and I paid like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars into the church, and I don't really begrudge that. I don't really want to do it anymore, but now I don't have to. Now it's my money. I earn that money. Uh, I don't have to give 10% to some church that's going to put it into putting a pool in their church campgrounds or some other cause that I don't believe in or that I found superfluous even then. I don't have to do that anymore. I can keep that money. That's 10% of my income. And actually I paid more than that. I paid almost double tithe. So that was a significant part of my income that now I have back. And I think just always worrying about, am I doing the right thing? Am I going the right way? Did I miss an opportunity? Trying to hear this voice in my head to guide me where I'm supposed to go. Many times following that voice and running into a dead end or something that's like, well, what was that for? I mean, I feel like I just wasted my time, and not knowing what's my voice and what's God's voice. They're all my voice. But thinking about my future, like I used to be told all the time, and still am actually, that God has a purpose for me, that God has this destiny that I'm to fulfill, and that my life is not my own, that my choice is not my own, that I was put here for this purpose that is completely God's, and that the only peace is in resigning myself to this purpose. I used to really, when I was a Christian, I remember hearing those sermons and really getting depressed by them because it just was a lot of confusion to me. But even when it wasn't just about those sermons, there was just always this feeling that's like, well, surely there's more that I'm meant to do than just what I'm doing. I mean, maybe I'm to be a teacher, maybe I'm to be a minister or a pastor or something, but never really feeling any particular passion about those things. And so questioning, well, I'm lukewarm. I must be lukewarm. Therefore, as the Revelation says, God's going to vomit me up out of his mouth because I just don't feel that passion that I should. So always second guessing myself, always feeling inadequate, always not able to enjoy things with perfect peace of mind, and always feeling like I'm failing in some way, that I just don't quite measure up to God's expectations, and at the same time not even knowing what those expectations are. So it's wonderful, really. And this dawns on me sometimes, just at the weirdest times. Like, especially like at the end of the night, where I've got two or three things I want to do. And it's all purely for my own enjoyment. Or when I have a weekend stretching before me, and I've got certain things I want to do, and I can just do those things. And I don't have to, in any way, think about, um, giving God his part of it. I can just live my life, and it's awesome. So there's a lot to be said. There's a lot of freedom that comes along with leaving these irrational beliefs behind. And again, this is not a sales pitch. Don't become an atheist because it's like, that sounds pretty good. I think I'll be an atheist. You should be an atheist because you recognize that there is simply no rational basis to believe in any of that stuff. That there's just no foundation that stands up to scrutiny for those beliefs. It is all something that is it's all something that is indoctrinated into our minds most of the time when we're children. It's something that is that's reinforced by the culture that we live in, and especially because of the fact that if you don't hold to those beliefs, in some ways you become an outcast, especially if you live in the Bible Belt like me. But having said that, it's perfectly worth it. Just follow the evidence, follow logic, and don't compromise. Don't live your life in fear. Don't live your life in any way that is not consistent with being honest with yourself. That's what I would say. And you won't regret that, ultimately, even if it turns out you're wrong. Even if it turns out, and this is something I realized, even if it turns out that I die and I stand before this God, and this God tells me you screwed up, that is far less frightening to me now than it was when I was a Christian, simply because I know that I can look that God in the eye and I can say, well, I may go to hell, I may burn for eternity, but it was you that screwed up because there was insufficient evidence for me to have this belief. So, freedom and atheism. And I'm going to cut that off here. So, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, leave me a comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. And I will talk to you.